I know cold showers are more traditional, but I was enjoying the warmth and relaxation the heat brought. I got my hair wet and groped for the soap.
"I'll do that for you,"
Eric said, pulling back the curtain to step into the shower with me. I gasped, just short of a shriek. He had discarded the jeans. He was also in the mood, the same mood I was in. You could really tell with Eric. His fangs were out some, too. I was embarrassed, horrified, and absolutely ready to jump him. While I stood stock still, paralyzed by conflicting waves of emotion, Eric took the soap out of my hands and lathered up his own, set the soap back in its little niche, and began to wash my arms, raising each in turn to stroke my armpit, down my side, never touching my breasts, which were practically quivering like puppies who wanted to be petted.
"Have we ever made love?"
he asked. I shook my head, still unable to speak.
"Then I was a fool,"
he said, moving one hand in a circular motion over my stomach.
"Turn around, lover."
I turned my back to him, and he began to work on that. His fingers were very strong and very clever, and I had the most relaxed and cleanest set of shoulder blades in Louisiana by the time Eric got through. My shoulder blades were the only thing at ease. My libido was hopping up and down. Was I really going to do this? It seemed more and more likely that I was, I thought nervously. If the man in my shower had been the real Eric, I would have had the strength to back off. I would have ordered him out the minute he stepped in. The real Eric came with a whole package of power and politics, something of which I had limited understanding and interest. This was a different Eric, without the personality that I'd grown fond of in a perverse way, but it was beautiful Eric, who desired me, who was hungry for me, in a world that often let me know it could do very well without me. My mind was about to switch off, and my body was about to take over. I could feel part of Eric pressed against my back, and he wasn't standing that close. Yikes! Yahoo! Yum! He shampooed my hair next.
"Are you trembling because you are frightened of me?"
he asked. I considered that. Yes and no. But I wasn't about to have a long discussion over the pros and cons. The inner debate had been tough enough. Oh yeah, I know, there wouldn't be a better time to have a long yada-yada with Eric about the moral aspects of mating with someone you didn't love. And maybe there would never be another time to lay ground rules about being careful to be gentle with me physically. Not that I thought Eric would beat me up, but his manhood, as my romance novels called it, in this case the popular adjectives burgeoning or throbbing might also be applied, was a daunting prospect to a relatively inexperienced woman like me. I felt like a car that had only been operated by one driver, a car its new prospective buyer was determined to take to the Daytona 500. Oh, to hell with thinking. I took the soap from the niche and lathered up my fingers. As I stepped very close to him, I kind of folded Mr. Happy up against Eric's stomach so I could reach around him and get my fingers on that absolutely gorgeous butt. I couldn't look him in the face, but he let me know he was delighted that I was responding. He spread his legs obligingly, and I washed him very thoroughly, very meticulously. He began to make little noises, to rock forward. I began to work on his chest. I closed my lips around his right nipple and sucked. He liked that a lot. His hands pressed against the back of my head.
"Bite a little,"
he whispered, and I used my teeth. His hands began to move restlessly over whatever bit of my skin they could find, stroking and teasing. When he pulled away, he had decided to reciprocate, and he bent down. While his mouth closed over my breast, his hand glided between my legs. I gave a deep sigh and did a little moving of my own. He had long fingers. The next thing I knew, the water was off and he was drying me with a fluffy white towel, and I was rubbing him with another one. Then we just kissed for a while, over and over.
"The bed,"
he said, a little raggedly, and I nodded. He scooped me up, and then we got into a kind of tangle with me trying to pull the bedspread down while he just wanted to dump me on the bed and proceed, but I had my way because it was just too cold for the top of the bed. Once we were arranged, I turned to him, and we picked back up where we'd left off, but with an escalating tempo. His fingers and his mouth were busy learning my topography, and he pressed heavily against my thigh. I was so on fire for him, I was surprised that flames didn't flicker out of my fingertips. I curled my fingers around him and stroked. Suddenly, Eric was on top of me, about to enter. I was exhilarated and very ready. I reached between us to put him at just the right spot, rubbing the tip of him over my nub as I did so.
"My lover,"
he said hoarsely, and pushed. Though I'd been sure I was prepared, and I ached with wanting him, I cried out with the shock of it. After a moment, he said,
"Don't close your eyes. Look at me, lover."
The way he said lover was like a caress, like he was calling me by a name no other man had ever used before or ever would after. His fangs were completely extended, and I stretched up to run my tongue over them. I expected he would bite my neck, as Bill nearly always did.
"Watch me,"
he said in my ear, and pulled out. I tried to yank him back, but he began kissing his way down my body, making strategic stops, and I was hovering on the golden edge when he got all the way down. His mouth was talented, and his fingers took the place of his penis, and then, all of a sudden, he looked up the length of my body to make sure I was watching. I was, and he turned his face to my inner thigh, nuzzling it, his fingers moving steadily now, faster and faster, and then he bit. I may have made a noise, I'm sure I did, but in the next second I was floating on the most powerful wave of pleasure I'd ever felt. And the minute the shining wave subsided, Eric was kissing my mouth again, and I could taste my own fluids on him, and then he was back inside me, and it happened all over again. His moment came right after, as I was still experiencing aftershocks. He shouted something in a language I'd never heard, and he closed his own eyes, and then he collapsed on top of me. After a couple of minutes, he raised his head to look down. I wished he would pretend to breathe, as Bill always had during sex. I'd never asked him, he'd just done it, and it had been reassuring. I pushed the thought away. I'd never had sex with anyone but Bill, and I guess it was natural to think of that. But the truth was, it hurt to remember my previous one-man status, now gone for good. I yanked myself back into the moment, which was fine enough. I stroked Eric's hair, tucking some behind his ear. His eyes on mine were intent, and I knew he was waiting for me to speak. "I wish," I said, "I could save orgasms in a jar for when I need them, because I think I had a few extra." Eric's eyes widened, and all of a sudden he roared with laughter. That sounded good. That sounded like the real Eric. I felt comfortable with this gorgeous but unknown stranger after I heard that laugh. He rolled onto his back and swung me over easily until I was straddling his waist.
"If I had known you would be this gorgeous with your clothes off, I would have tried to do this sooner,"
he said. "You did try to do this sooner, about 20 times, I said, smiling down at him.
"Then I have good taste."
He hesitated